Awesome. So please go ahead, put in chat your name so we can meet one another. It's a great place to also meet people. Your name, your role, your organization, if you will, and of course, where you're joining us from in the globe. It's so beautiful how that the world is such a global village, right? So please let us know where you're joining us from. We would love to have to know. Let me just check in chat and see what's going on there. Ah, Yolanda from Netherlands. Fantastic. Oluchi from Nigeria. Oh, wow, Francis from Uganda. Beautiful. Please let's go ahead and just type in chat where you're joining us from. Let's see. I think there are more messages here. Ah, fantastic. Oh, Vivian from Nigeria. Mike from Freetown, Sierra Leone. Fantastic. Rex from Nigeria. Vivian, Oluchi. Yes, Moyo Shori. I hope I got that right. Forgive me. From Nigeria. Isaac Abuja. Ah, Jan Richfield, lovely name from Nigeria. Paul from FCT. Fantastic. It's great to have you all here. It's such an exciting time to be discussing the topic, executing your goals amidst economic uncertainties. Keep it coming. Thank you so much, Kolawale Enoch from Nigeria. It's great to have you all here. Oh, wow. Search, lovely people in the call. Fantastic. A lot of Abuja people. Nice. Where the seat of power is in Nigeria. Beautiful. Great to have you all here. And so let me just ask us to put in chat, what is top of mind for you as you think about the topic, you know, executing your goals amidst economic uncertainties? What comes to mind for you? Why is this such a big thing for you? Why did you join the webinar? Why are you interested in discussing this topic? Please go ahead and tell us in chat. Welcome, Jennifer from Lagos. Please go ahead and tell us in chat. Why is this a big deal? Why is executing your goals an issue? Why is it something you'd like to be discussing? Because you could be discussing something else at this time, but tell us, put it in chat. We'd love to know. Thanks, Yolanda. Okay, so whilst you're putting that all in chat, my name is Egwono Wie, and I'm from Nigeria. I'm sales and marketing lead for practice lead for FranklinCovey Nigeria, and I'm excited to be with you here today. I have an amazing speaker who will be, you know, talking with us shortly. But for now, let's just look at what you all are putting in chat. Mike says resources are scarce and limited, yet goals need to be executed. How do I marry the two? My goodness. It's an issue of marriage here. Putting it together, resources that are scarce and goals that need to be executed. Fantastic. Moyoshore says how to achieve quality outcomes with limited resources. So Michael and Moyoshore are definitely thinking like scarce resources, but we must deliver quality outcomes. Yolanda says executing in a more busy and complex world is a huge challenge more than ever. Yes, I hear you completely. Kolawale speaks about how important it is because of the VUCA nature of business, right? Requiring strategic approach more than the non-strategic foresight. The need to connect the unforeseen with the present state of things. Fantastic. Hillary, chaos can be a ladder if the problems can be reframed as opportunities. Fantastic. I love it. Awesome. It's really, really great to have you all here. And please keep it coming in chat. We are currently, in case you just joined us, this is Franklin Copy Nigeria. My name remains Egwana Owie, and we're discussing the topic executing your goals amidst economic challenges or uncertainties. So you want to put in chat why this is top of mind for you. What about it that you are really interested in? And we see a lot of um, thoughts on the chat that speak to resources being scarce and yet needing to execute on our goals. It's really great to have you all here. Awesome. So just before I give it over, because I'd like us to jump into the topic, is really hot and we need to jump in very quickly. Allow me to just tell you a little bit about what we do at Franklin Covey. So at FranklinCovey, of course, we have served over 160 countries and counting. We've been in business as top leadership organization for 35 years and counting. And of course, we spend a lot when it comes to research, because for us, the solutions need to be, aligned with what's going on in the world. And we do this, we spend a lot of money, over 200 million is spent and counting on research, with a lot of client engagements every year, 15,000 plus and more. And of course, because we are in over 160 countries, we support all sorts of languages. I know that maybe for those of us who are here, English is probably the primary or first or second language. But for us as FranklinCovey Nigeria, we know that there are four areas that organizations need to succeed in. And the challenges that really matter most will be, one, developing exceptional leaders at every level, instilling habits of effectiveness in every individual across the organization, building an inclusive, high trust culture. Of course, if the trust culture is low and it's not inclusive, you can imagine how difficult it would be to, get to those goals, those widely important goals. And very importantly, also, is having that common execution framework through which, as an organization, we can pursue our most important goals. At the end of the day, are we able to execute and, grow our business, be profitable, and, on and on like that. So those are some of the areas that we know are critical for organizations that want to succeed. And we as FranklinCovey Nigeria, everything we do is designed to help our clients succeed in these four key areas. So, just a little bit about us. I really just want us to jump now into the session and just invite our speaker. So let me tell you a little bit about our speaker. Our speaker is Francis Egusin. He's the FranklinCovey partner in Uganda. And really excited to have you here, Francis. He has over 20 years of senior leadership experience, and he has been in the business of helping clients deliver on the priorities that matter most. He's an executive coach with the Columbia University and also the International Coach Federation. So please join me in welcome Mr. Francis. Mr. Francis, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Thank you, Eguano, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute pleasure to be here with you to discuss what obviously is top of mind. Eguano, thank you and the folks in Nigeria for inviting me. I certainly have looked forward to this, essentially to share. Eguano has already unpacked at least four areas where FranklinCovey spends a lot of time in partnering with organizations, and we intend to do that today. So in response to the first question, I see a lot of people have already indicated why this is important, and part of the conversation we're going to have is really to find out what you've done, what has worked, what hasn't worked for you, and also to share what we have learned based on our experience in thousands of implementations across the globe around dealing with uncertainty and really giving leaders a handle for understanding a number of things. One, of course, which will be no great surprise to you, is the idea that uncertainty has always been with us, right? COVID did not invent uncertainty, even though we experienced uncertainty in a very particular way. The idea, I think CCL talks about this idea of volatility, uncertainty, and complexity. For those business leaders on the call, I think those would be things that are quite familiar. So we want to go in. There are essentially three big ideas we'd like to share, and I'm going to ask you a question shortly. So the first is, in times of uncertainty, our work indicates, one, that there's need for leaders essentially to look in the mirror, right? I think we always think of uncertainty as something we need to do to other people. But the first one is really, what do I need to do to myself to make sure I reduce this level of ambiguity, determine the way I show up as a leader, so I can better accelerate the business outcomes that I know I'm capable of leading. The second idea is that how do we as leaders create credibility? How do we become more credible? Because and I think you've seen it in a lot of the media, in periods of uncertainty and crisis, the war for talent, right, is high. So a lot of people, either you've heard people talk about quiet quitting, you've heard people going on to start their own entrepreneurship journeys. So that's another one, is this idea of credibility. And we know that where credibility is high, we accelerate the rate at which we execute our strategy, and certainly can make our results more predictable. Then the third point we want to share would be the idea that in periods of uncertainty, somebody said people are not afraid of change, right? They are just they're afraid of uncertainty. So in periods of uncertainty, what can the leader do to create some level of focus so that the team and organization, in the midst of the whirlwind of what is happening, can still focus on one or two priorities? So what are some things that we can do in that area? So those will be the three ideas that I'll be unpacking. But I'm not the only smart one in the room. I think the room is full of a lot of talent. So if you can just either go in the chat or mute your microphone. So in your own experience, the question really is, in your own experience, what are one or two things you've done to navigate uncertainty that we can learn from? You can type it in the chat, or you can unmute your microphone to share. What have you done as a leader? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michael.
So Nkechi has raised the hand to speak. I'm going to
Yes,
unmute
go ahead,
Nkechi.
Nkechi.
One moment, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Nkechi. We can hear you, Nkechi.
Nkechi, we can hear you.
Okay, please carry on.
Okay, Kester, I choose to focus on hindering control. Thank you, Kester. Oh, Nkechi, you can type in the chat if you have any audio problems. Then Michael said transparency is key during uncertain times. Michael, if you unmute your microphone, what's going through your mind when you say transparency is key?
I guess there are two Michaels. Transparency
sorry.
is not mine.
There's Michael Enema and there's Michael without the last name.
Sure, so I am Michael Enema.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nkechi said what I did is to eliminate silo work. That way everyone knows that the next person is doing, and so there's business continuity. Okay. All right. So I think people are familiar, right, in terms of some of the things you've done in those in periods of crisis or uncertainty. Paulono says show empathy and support. Okay. All right. So let's make some progress. So remember, the first point I made is with leaders, the first leadership task is really with you, right? Not the team, especially in periods of uncertainty. And this is what you're looking at. I'm just going to share one slide here. Just pull it up. Okay. All right, so these are the 3 points I mentioned earlier in terms of handles that leaders can have. So we're just going to unpack a few, then come back again to the questions. So remember the first point around this idea that the leader really is the most effective instrument of their leadership journey. And that is so true, especially in periods when people are uncertain. So the first thing we want to do is really see how do we reduce the level of uncertainty for ourselves, and how do we enable proactivity. Because what is happening is that, even from the folks who have looked at this, anytime we are anxious as leaders, there are essentially two types. We call it two states that the leader is working in. There's a piece where we call the anxious brain, and the other piece is called the curious brain. And let me, I think I have a slide on that. Let me just show you the way that works and why that is so important when we talk about what we need to do for ourselves. So if you look at this, what I was talking about, the two states, because when stimulus happens, what usually happens is we become anxious as leaders, right? And we default to a number of things that we already know how to do, regardless of whether or not they are effective. So that becomes the key question, right? What do I have to do to save myself? Now, just take a look and see some of the ways. Hopefully, this is familiar. If not, it's something just to consider, right? What is happening? We focus more narrowly. There's a need for us to be certain. I have seen myself doing that, right? I want to be right in the midst of a global pandemic. And how do I avoid the threat? And a bunch of this. Now, the problem is, if you remain in this state as a leader, if we respond to stimulus this way, then we don't give us the capacity to really be curious. And we say we all have that capacity. We say between stimulus and response, man has the capacity. Now, some people argue and say, you just don't know my condition. But really, in our work, especially with habits of effectiveness, we say between stimulus and response, there are what we call 4 human endowments that enables us to be better versions of ourselves, regardless of the crisis that is emerging. And the first one is this idea of self-awareness, of knowing our strengths, weaknesses, destructive impulses, and the things we do that work against us. You have conscience, independent will, right, and imagination. And imagination is a big one. And there's a great piece by Anne Julian on this. The idea that we have various states of imagining a preferred future, and we're not constrained by the conditions of today. So we offer in our work that when we find that leaders can tap into that to begin to open up, right, in terms of how do I think differently? What are novel ways of looking at these experiences? How do I cast a wide net? And here I recall one of my clients who is a large distributor of petroleum industries in Uganda. I remember during COVID-2, first they had a goal, right, of improving their business performance factor by 1, right? So this is a factor that's a composite of a bunch of indicators. But as soon as COVID hit, they narrowed very quickly. They say, hey, wait a minute, I haven't looked at the environment. What is the most significant thing we can accomplish? It didn't take them long to say, you know what, product availability, the ability to make fuel available in Uganda was #1 priority, right? So rather than being taken hostage of the condition. So key takeaway here, leaders have the capacity not to be hijacked by their conditions. How do we do that? There are 4 endowments that are readily available. key point in the first one is, and I'm just going to stop sharing this, the key point in the first of the three things has to do with the leader. What can I do as a leader to make sure I show up effectively in the midst of what is happening? So that's the first point. Egusin, was there any questions or comments in the chat regarding the first point I just raised?
Not yet.
Okay.
Just checking in now, not yet.
Okay.
But very
I welcome
interesting
your
thoughts,
comments
really.
or questions. Let me also say that the slides we're offering, the slides I'm using, we're going to make them available to you at the end. So if you can just stay focused on the conversation and let's have a conversation, hopefully, that you'll find. Yes, thank you, Vivian. So Vivian wrote flexibility and adaptability. And that's the point we're saying leaders have that capacity to be able to do that. Then the second point is this idea of how do we increase our credibility, right? That in the midst of crisis, the credibility of the leader is an important condition, not only for attracting, but also for retaining talent. So how do we do that? So in our work with leaders across the globe, we partner around this process of building high trust environments. We say, for a leader to be able to attract and retain and indeed accelerate business results, the leader must be credible. There are what we call four cores of credibility. The first one is actually, let me show you a way to think about this. I'm just going to show you a slide. Just one quick way to think about this, which is right here. All right. So yeah, the four cores. Notice the analogy is really that of a tree, right? So if we ask the question, if we want this tree to produce significant results, it's a no-brainer where we need to spend our time, right? In terms of the roots. So these four things, the integrity of the leader, ability to make and keep commitments to themselves, your intent for the business, key capabilities, and your track record of results. We say these four things are in high demand, particularly the first two, in periods where people are looking for a handle to make meaning of their reality. Okay. So there are specific ways in our work with clients in building high trust environments where we can partner with you to begin to look and see how do we build this in an environment. And part of that includes what we call 13 high trust behaviors. But for purposes of our conversation, we'll show, I think, a few of them. Now, look at some of the key questions, though. Let's see why these questions are important. Look at the first one. Congruence, right? That there is an alignment between our ability to be humble, right? Hear feedback, but also the courage to take tough decisions and work with the team to agree on those goals that matter. Intent and motive. Why are we doing what we're doing? What is our agenda? And we say the agenda that is that people find quite useful is one where there's mutual benefit, right? Third one is the need for us to continue to commit to continued professional development as a leader. Yesterday's anointing will not deliver today's results. And lastly, what is our track record of results? Here, there are specific behaviors which the leader can do to kind of help do that. And some of those are what we call the 13 high trust behaviors. Some examples of that, one is just our ability to communicate clearly. We say, talk straight without covering our language in legalese and confusion. Just ability to do that. Ability to clarify expectations, especially in periods of uncertainty. This is what you require of me. This is what the business requires. Here's how we are going to make and keep commitments on a weekly basis, and yet the kind of results we're going for, right? Now, I make it sound simpler than it is, and I think you leaders, this is hard work, But in our work and partnership, we believe a partnership with us can help accelerate this where this already exists, or begin to give you new lenses for looking at crisis and uncertainty, especially in the periods where we are in. So let me pause and just see if there are some questions or comments based on the 2 points I have raised. How you show up as a leader, and how do you increase your credibility?
So Michael has mentioned transparency as well in chat.
Okay. I didn't see that. Yeah, so Michael and Emma, I think you spoke earlier. So tell us, how do you see transparency connecting with the 2 points I just made, or what do you have in mind when you say transparency?
Yeah, so I said that in reaction to what you were saying with regard to how open communication builds trust in the team. Don't use highfalutin words, words that people find difficult to comprehend. So use words that paint the picture that they can relate with, so that at least your communication is effective when people understand what you are saying. Otherwise, they get the feeling that there's something you are hiding.
That's right.
And you don't want that to happen. Thank you.
Michael, thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Then I see somebody from FranklinCovey, Nigeria. I say economic uncertainty will hijack. He said, interesting. Not to be drawn into it. Yes. Thank you. And really, we offer, once again, not to sound flippant, really, we are offering it as a choice, right? As a choice. That we know uncertainty will come, we know stimulus will come, but that we're endowed with a capacity to choose differently in how we show up. And that's really the point. Thank you. Anybody else? Question, comments?
So mine is a question. My name is Moses.
Yes,
mine
Moses.
is a question.
Yes.
In the period of uncertainty, let's talk about COVID. And when you have maybe like a board structure where members of the board are keen on profitability and all their focus is on the profitability of the business, how do you handle situations like that? While you, as the leader, your intention is to stabilize the business during the period of uncertainty, while the other members of the board, who are also investors too, they are keen on the profit, the immediate profit of the business. How do you balance this interest?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And sorry, did you say Michael? Was that his name, Michael?
No, Moses.
Moses, okay. Moses, thank you for bringing that, which I think is a great segue into the third point around this idea of providing a process to make sure we have clarity, right, on what's important most to the business. In our experience, and I'm sure Moses, maybe from your own experience, profitability is a byproduct of doing something, right? Nobody becomes profitable because I am doing a 100-meter dash to profitability, right? So in periods of uncertainty, just like we mentioned earlier, the board, like all adults, we are saying we are not afraid of what is coming, but we need a way of seeing it, right? So in our experience with a number of boards in Uganda and elsewhere, we have found, especially boards that are genuinely interested in supporting the management team, we have found situations where they actually come together and say, rather than being hijacked by these conditions, what does this condition demand of us as a team? And here what we offer is really our process for making sure that the entire leadership team is aligned on what is the most significant priority in the business at this time. What is that thing, that problem, opportunity, or challenge that if we took advantage of it, we will make profitability habitual? right? Moses is the challenge. Is how do we engage our stakeholders, including frontline teams, the hedges of the business where we believe great returns are generated. How do we come together and have a conversation around our future facilitated by this process? 4 disciplines, right? We said there are 4 disciplines that are necessary to really get people to begin to see differently, begin to act differently, and hopefully begin to get different results. So step 1 will really be that conversation. And we'll be more than glad to share what that conversation looks like, what is involved in it, how do we install a process that provides visibility, that the things we are doing every day will lead to that thing, whether it's profitability, whatever your major economic indicator is. Because we will argue that profitability, like most financial indicators, are lagging indicators. These are indicators you get after you've done something. So what are those things we need to do, right, to make sure that sets us on a trajectory for that goal? So that's the way I will come at it, Moses, and certainly more than glad to take this up offline and share a few more things in that regard. Thank you for your question. Oluchi's hand is raised. Go ahead, Oluchi.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. So as we were talking about trust, something came to my mind, and that's the reason why I would like to ask this question.
Yeah.
So we can technically say the definition of trust is a combination of character and competence.
Yeah.
So my question around this would be using, let me paint like a scenario. You have as a leader, you have 2 team members. One of them is high on competence and low on character, and the other is high on character and low on competence. So as a leader, if you are to decide that, you know what, I am one person, who would you go for?
Oluchi, something tells me that you know the answer to that question.
I would like to hear from you, sir, if you don't mind. Thank you.
No problem. So I mean, we can provide you a way of thinking about it, right? So remember the tree I showed earlier. We said the roots, if you want this tree to continue to get consistent results, then our experience, hopefully it will align with yours, shows that where we should spend our time, right? We said intent and integrity, right? And we said intent and integrity really combine, form the character of that person. So if the question is, how do I make sure I get great results with my organization and team? Where should I focus? Then that's the suggestion we are making, right? That's the suggestion we're making. I may add, let's tap into our own experience. What experience do we have with things in nature, right, that produce great results and fruits for retention and yet have weak roots, right? What can we do as leaders to model the character needed, right? People say the culture of any organization is the sum of the behaviors of its senior leaders. So what can we do? Now, nobody was created to have low competence. In fact, if you look at the research by Gallup on employee engagement, this has been over 35 years, we now know that the idea of engaged, disengaged, and not engaged are really choices adults are making, right? So once again, back to the point, I think we have some work to do in the organization. And the good news is these are skills we can learn, right? Remember, your definition of trust is the confidence born out of somebody's character and competence. And both of them we can improve. So it's not either or, it's and. And what commitment are we going to make as a leadership team to make sure we build a high trust environment? Not because it is motivational, but because it helps us accelerate our results. Trust is hard-edged. Trust is not soft, contrary to what some people may think. So that's my offering, Oluchi, on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? comments in the chat or questions?
Yeah, John Michael says leaders should lead by example, model the behavior they expect from their team.
Yeah, yeah. And John, maybe you can come off mute and tell us what's been your experience with that, where leaders have done that. What have you experienced? I don't know, maybe John has a mic issue. How about Nkechi? Nkechi says leaders should walk the talk. Nkechi, if you're able to come off mute, what has been your experience where you have actually seen that happen? Okay. All right. So as we wind down, I'm just gonna get to 3 slides. Okay, there we go. Okay, so well, thank you all for your comments and your question. Egon, I'll remain here once I do my last. Okay, yes, Enoch. Enoch says he thinks there's a generational decline. Enoch, what do you have in mind when you say generational decline?
Oh, okay, sorry. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so just taking a look at businesses generally in different climates, you'll be surprised to realize that leaders are declining. And the question you could begin to ask yourself, is it due to the broken home?
Mhm.
Is it a societal problem? Is it a generational problem? So if you begin to wonder, top leaders who very good at their stake, you find them wanting in some very funny areas. And this is cascading into even society and the young professionals that are coming up out there. So that's why I had to throw that across to you and say, what do you think? You know, that's my thought.
Yeah. No, the generational is what got me. I think I've heard people talk about, various generations of different alphabets. So I've forgotten which one we're on now. But if the question is there a gap in this thing called character and trust? I will say I don't know. I don't know what the research says. But what I do know from our work with organizations, with employees across various geographies and age groups, is that these are things that can be cultivated, right? Trust and character. These are not just traits you have at birth, and if you were born in a certain country, you don't have it. No, these are things that can be cultivated. And there's great news out there of organizations that are making their commitment to cultivating this and seeing great results. And some of that I can even share from some of the work we've done in East Africa and elsewhere. I know we have Yolanda on the line. I'm sure there'll be some great examples from Europe and elsewhere as well, where these are things that people, once they know about them and they know the impact of them, and that we create conditions internally that can support them, the growth of this type of attributes, I think, we could be well on our way to building it. So that would be my take. And I think a lot also has to do with the way our leaders perceive the people that we are leading, which leads me to a video I just want to show before I wrap up around this idea of, as a leader, how do you see the people you are leading, right? As a man thinks, so is he. As he continues to think, so he remains, right? The way I see determines what I do, right? And what I do in turn determines the kind of results that I get. So let me cue this video, which talks about this idea of a multiplier and a diminisher. Gives us, again, one more way of looking at the people we lead, especially when we are facing a downturn. Let me just go to that. Oops, sorry. And as we watch this, I think she makes 2 points about the lens for looking. Do you see the person as a multiplier, or do you see the person as a diminisher? Let's see what lessons we can learn from that.
We find that multipliers see people differently than other leaders do. Instead of seeing people as interchangeable or walking job descriptions, they look at people and they see what it is that they're uniquely and innately good at. I like to call this their native genius. It's what they do better than anything else they do and better than the people around them. It's what they're going to do, whether it's their job or not, and honestly, whether you want them to do it or not. While a diminisher may ask, is this person smart? The multiplier asks, in what way is this person smart? Finding genius is important because our biggest challenges tend to require something more from people, that unexpected spark of brilliance, that above and beyond energy that comes when people are doing their thing in service to something bigger than themselves. Simply put, if we can find somebody's native genius, it unlocks not only brilliant performance, but also discretionary effort. And when each person's native genius is understood across a team, it fosters a deep collaboration and creates a sense of belonging. When a leader unlocks someone's native genius, they get people's best thinking and work voluntarily. And when a leader does this for you, you get to go to work where your unique capabilities are seen, used, stretched, recognized, and appreciated by the people you work with. That's the kind of place everyone wants to work.
Just stop sharing. Give me a minute here. Okay. All right. So I think she makes the point, and as I was watching the video, it also drew my attention to this. She mentioned this idea of giving you discretionary effort. It turns out it's the same effort we find. Yes, exactly. It's the same effort we find when you look at the engagement surveys, right? That employees who are engaged are likely to give you the same thing, discretionary effort. And at least in one study with Intuit, that has gone to as high as 1.3 times what the average productivity is. Now, the good news is that leaders can create conditions where this can happen almost habitually, right? People are engaged where they feel safe, right, to make a contributions without retribution. 2, sense of belonging, regardless of what the economic conditions are. And 3, growth. And we found in our work that where these 3 things are present, then you're likely to get this idea of engaged and discretionary effort. So in sum, just to remind you of the 3 big ideas we talked about, which is right here, that in periods where we are unsure and uncertain, we need a handle first for ourselves, right? Is to be able to make sure how we show up and the impact on others are quite important. Goldman talks about this idea of self-awareness and as one of the single most important conditions for team and organizational success. How do we do that? We offered you the 4 endowments and this idea that between stimulus and response, we have capacity to make choices, and that we are not just a bystander in the economic activity or political crisis that one may find themselves. 2, that we are challenged to model credibility, and I think several people in the chat talked about that, because in times of crisis and uncertainty, there's a war for talent. There's a war for talent anyway, but ever more so when you have that. And how do we do that? We offered you the 4 cores of credibility. We said intent, integrity. We talked about capability and your track record of results. And there was a conversation around the idea, hey, is intent and integrity or character for that matter in short supply today? And I said, well, I don't have data, but the good news is something we can do to make sure we continue to have environments that reflect that. Then lastly, we talked about this idea that we can have a process that helps create some level of certainty by eliminating ambiguity. And there was a question around what if there's a tension between stakeholder requirements, and we offered that through a process of identifying what the most significant gap in performance is and a commitment to that gap and a visible way of making sure whether we are winning or losing, we're able to create a system, right, that people can say, I know what is happening, I know there's crisis, but there's no doubt what I focus on, right? So based on our work, this will be what we want to suggest are 3 ideas that we think you should consider, and 3 ideas we're more than glad to partner with you to have further conversations in terms of what will this, first, how do you feel about these things? What do they mean to you and where you are in your business? What are some things you need to be able to take some type of informed action? So on that note, I want to say thank you. And let me hand over to Egusin as you moderate if there are more questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Francis. Exciting. So many nuggets to take away. But before we go into the takeaway, there is a question from Innocent in chat. The leader may have the zeal, the courage to ensure that the goals are achieved, even in the midst of crisis and uncertainties. What will happen if the leads, so I guess that would be the direct reports, are not adapting to change to meet the challenges?
Yes.
And just before you go on that, Michael responded to him to say, the leader needs to look inwards and find a way of inspiring the right action in the team. Giving instructions alone would make it happen.
That's right. I was going to say, I don't need to touch that one. But it just also invokes something in me. You see, the leaders are not leaders because once again, this is my own editorial. I don't think leaders are leaders because they're the smartest ones in the room, right? We need leaders who have capacity, right, to listen, right? Somebody talked about this idea, said never underestimate the fact that you can listen someone to their greatness. The ability to suspend judgment. What are people saying? You are working with adults, not kids. Even kids these days challenge you. Dad, what do you mean by that, right? So telling is not enough. The return on telling is quite low, right? So how do we create an environment where people feel that collectively we belong? There is no leader-led, right? I'm doing it, but it's the people. If only I had different people. Well, there's a major industrialist in Uganda who told me, listen, you can't fire everybody, right? So there's a challenge that we have as leaders to create those conditions, which we talked about earlier, of safety, of belonging, and engagement. So competencies, listening is a big one. Ability to ask questions that open the space. Somebody mentioned empathy, I dare say compassion, right? To see through other lenses. Now, none of this is saying that leaders can make the tough decisions. That's why we talk about courage, right? I want to be able to be courageous, but I want to be humble. So courage and humility are not inconsistent, right? But those are the things. It takes, what's his name, talks about in the midst of artificial intelligence, AI, rapid rates of technology, we'll need new ways of learning, and we need new ways of leading. That organizations that will thrive in the future are those where their rate of learning is usually greater than the rate of change. It's a new day out there in the workforce, would be from our own experience. Anyway, thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic. And some more thoughts, just going on there in chat about, leaders showing empathy, inspiring and motivating people, being curious and open-minded as well, and balancing courage and consideration. And then some Emmanuel Ekba says delegating wisely. Yeah. So very interesting thoughts. If you have any question, we can take 1 or 2 questions. You can just either raise your hand or type it in chat. Mr. Francis will be more than happy. And if you want to have a further conversation once the meeting is over, because we're definitely going to close this at the top of the hour, you can stay back for a few minutes and we can also, continue the conversation. But this has been exciting. Thank you, Mr. Francis. Really, really exciting to think about the fact that, the leader has to first, think about leading themselves, as it were. before they then begin to think about dealing with all of the issues. And I really like the economic uncertainty hijack, so the thing coming on there that we have capacity to be able to deal with it. So let me quickly ask that we put in chat, what's your takeaway so far? All that Mr. Francis shared around the topic, executing your goals amidst economic uncertainty. And we said that economic uncertainty is not new. Please let us know in chat what your biggest takeaways are. What's the one thing or maybe two that you're taking out of this session, that has made it worth your while? Please put in chat for us very quickly. Eliminating ambiguity, all that she says. Guess this is uncertainty is a reality, and we have to prepare adequately for it. Very true. I mean, yes, it's really a reality. It's not going anywhere. I guess it's one level of uncertainty to the other. Like you said, Mr. Francis, COVID was a special type of uncertainty, but yes, it was still an uncertainty. Yeah, truly interesting thoughts there. Please, let's go ahead and put in chat. And whilst you're doing that, we'll quickly just open up a poll just to get your thoughts and your feedback. This will help us to support you further. Nkechi says, VUCA is here to stay. We must stay open-minded and remain nimble. I hear you, Nkechi. Kalawale says the need, create an environment where team can culture, trust, character, and credibility. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. Leaders are big listeners, yes, and not necessarily the smartest people. I know it takes off the leader to say, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Just need to know how to harness smart people in my room. Well, Sherry, very powerful. Leaders need to look in the mirror and create credibility. Very, very true. Employees who are engaged give you discretionary efforts. I know they go the extra mile. They push beyond what you ask. Absolutely fantastic. So I've opened up the poll and would like to hear your feedback. Please just 1 or 2 minutes, just help us fill in the details of the poll. Thank you very much. And please, once you're done with that, keep the thoughts coming in chat. We really would love to know, hear your thoughts and your takeaways from this session. Habib, you want to say something? Hi, Habib. Okay, I think there's another point here whilst we're filling in the survey. Marcus says to be calm during uncertainties. Look inwards more and show empathy without sacrificing standards and deliverables. Communicate using clear language. Very, very true. Really powerful thoughts here. And I'm liking all of these powerful thoughts that are coming in. As FranklinCovey, we are happy to support you further. And so please feel free to reach out, and we will also reach out to you, see where else we can support you. Because we know that this journey, like Mr. Francis had said, can be accelerated, right? Executing your goals, just shifting when it comes to trust within the organization, building that high trust culture. These are areas that we have helped many organizations, to thrive in, and we would love to also support your organization. Yes, Nkechi says emotional intelligence is critical to success as a leader. Yeah, leaders need to appreciate the strength of their followers. Really true. And one of the things that we find that organizations are successful in is that part of developing, or successful organizations focus on, is that part of developing leaders. Yes, I'm just checking if Habib wants to speak. Okay, maybe not. Awesome. So 1 or 2 more minutes with the survey. I'm looking here, I'm seeing, please go ahead and just put in. Yes, we have a number of people who have put in their thoughts. We would love to hear more. Please go ahead if you haven't filled in the survey yet. If you can't see the survey, please let us know in chat and our team will help you with that. Yes. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Marjorie, for joining. We really appreciate your presence. Please go ahead and fill in the survey for those who haven't. We really would love to hear from you if this has been helpful, and we can look forward to inviting you to further sessions. Yes, John Michael says, listen more and speak last as the leader. Extremely important. Extremely important. Okay, so we will definitely, yes, thank you, Nkechi. We will definitely reach out with some details as to how you can still reach us. And so please look out for that email when it does come. Thank you so much for making our time to be here. Really, really appreciate all of the sharing and discussion. Thank you, Mr. Francis, and thank you everyone for making this an exciting session. We look forward to seeing you in our other webinars. We would send out invites, and please feel free to join and share widely as well. We know that if we keep this conversation going, we can begin to change the environment within our industries, regardless of what industry you're in, and begin to see the kind of change that we look forward to having within our organizations. Thank you. Thank you all so much for making our time to be here. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye. And if you have a question, please stay back. Mr. Francis, happy to answer some more questions. Thank you.